Gabriel. I'm an interviewer with the Public Library of Cincinnati and Hamilton County. I'm interviewing Frank Heekin here on November 21st, 2006 at the main library. Our camera operator today is Yvonne. Mr. Heekin, we're going to start out with a few questions about your background. Tell us where you grew up and what you did prior to the war.
I was born and raised in Hyde Park, Cincinnati, Ohio. I'm the seventh son of 12 children.
Wow.
And my father's one of 15 children. So I got a lot of relatives.
Well, that's great.
And I went to St. X High School, and it was downtown. And I went to Spring Hill College. Then I went to Indiana University. And I left there in 1941. And I was drafted in 1941. I went to...
Why did you leave the university?
Huh?
Why did you leave the university in 1941? Did you graduate?
No, I didn't graduate. I got 3 years in.
Okay.
And I left, and I went to work for my dad. He had a little business down Water and Walnut Streets. And I was there until June 21st, 1941. I was drafted. They sent me out to Fort Sill, Oklahoma. And I went through basic training there. And we had a lot of West Pointers. And the only recollection I have of December the 7th was that I had gone to a movie that night, and I came back and just went to bed. And the next morning we had a road march, and we went out on this road march, and I was driving a big Major West Pointer, and he had a radio. We tuned in to President Roosevelt's speech at noon, and he was married to a Hawaiian woman. So he was a little apprehensive.
No doubt.
Yeah.
What were you being trained for at Fort Sill?
I was they put me in the motor pool right away. I wasn't very good at anything else, I guess. But anyway, I drove trucks, and we had what they call RSOC 12, Reserve Officers Training Program, and we trained 98 A1ers, and the last one was a 3-day problem out in the field, and that got to be pretty good. I was pretty good at that. So I had a lot of my buddies from St. Xavier High School. St. Xavier came out. They all looked me up. So I stayed there until 1942, about December or so. I took the test for aviation cadets, and I passed it.
Was that given right there at Fort Sill?
Huh?
Right there at Fort Sill?
Yeah, I saw an ad in the paper for aviation cadets. I said, hey, that's what I'll do. I'll go fly airplanes. And I took the test and passed it, and they said, give me a slip for in the morning, so that meant I had to come back, take the examination, take the physical, and passing physicals in those days was duck soup. So I passed that, and they sent me down to, I'm forgetting something. Well, they sent, oh yeah, I wrote home. I wrote home and I wrote to my mother. And she wrote back the most scathing letter you ever read in all your life. She said, of all the people to fly airplanes, you're the worst. Ted is flying. Dick could fly. Ed could fly. And Frank couldn't do nothing. And I just ignored it. And I went down to San Antonio, Texas, and they gave me another test, and I apparently flunked that. And so they sent me out to, they sent me out to California to mechanic school. And so I went through that, and they sent me to Kingman, Arizona, to gunnery school. So I became a gunner. And we formed into a crew in Salt Lake City, and then we took our overseas training in Dalhart, Texas, which is about 90 miles north of Amarillo.
And you were a crew to fly what type of plane?
It was B-17.
Okay.
And I was there was two waist gunners, and I was chosen as one of the waist gunners. And then we took our training there and went up to Nebraska, and we were supposed to get an airplane, and it didn't materialize. So they put us on a train to take us to Boston, and we got on a boat in Boston and went overseas by boat.
Took you a lot longer to get there.
Huh?
Took you a lot longer.
Took us about a week. Took us about a week. And then I get to, they sent us all up to a place called The Wash. And there we took some more gunnery training. And then they sent us down to the 457th Bomb Group, 751st Squadron. And they called my name out. They woke us up one time on June the 21st, 3 years after I get in the Army. They woke me up and they said, "You're flying today." I said, "Okay." Breakfast at 5 o'clock. So they get you up about 3. And then we went out to the airplane, and I said to the pilot, I said, "Well, I got my 3 years in the Army." He said, "Where's your discharge?" I said, "That'll come later." And so we get up and we flew the mission.
What was the mission for?
The mission was to Berlin. And we went out over the Baltic Sea and turned right at some town. That was and then we turned right again, and the mission was to bomb the underground railroads, or the subways of Berlin. And we dropped our bombs, made the great big right turn home, and a flak battery opened up, and we got shot down.
On your first mission?
On my first mission.
Oh my gosh.
So I always introduce myself as half a mission Heekin. I'm the only Air Force man I know of that went over on a boat, came back on a boat, and walked further than most infantry.
So it was anti-aircraft that shot you down?
Yeah, anti-aircraft shot us down.
Where did it hit the plane?
It hit right 2 engines. 2 engines were on fire. And the tail gunner came back. He was his name was Vasilopoulos, in Big Creek. And he came back and he said, "What's going on?" And I pointed to those two engines on fire. He said, "What are we waiting on?" So he kicked the door open and left.
Wow. Had the captain given the signal yet?
Huh?
Had the captain given the order to?
I think the electrical system was all knocked out,
Oh, boy.
so we didn't have any signals. And then the radio man, I put the harness on him, put the chute on him, and the ball turret gunner, I had to wind him up, pull him out, and he was just 19 years old. And he was, we put the harness on him, put the chute on him, pushed him out the door.
All the while, what's the plane doing?
It was flying level,
Oh, thank goodness.
and it was on automatic pilot. And then I left. And I was picked up right away.
As you're on your way down.
It took me about it seemed like it took me a half an hour to get down.
Had you ever been in a parachute before?
No,
No.
we had 15 minutes instructions on how to use an air. A parachute.
What time of day is it? Is it dark or light?
It was around noon.
Oh, boy. So they saw you coming.
Yeah, they saw us coming. Only thing I was interested in was getting clear of the tail.
Yeah.
That's the problem with the B-24, not the 17s so much, because it was a high tail.
I see.
And so I came down,
Did everybody get out?
everybody got out of the airplane,
Great.
but 5 of us got killed. 5 of them got killed.
No kidding.
Yeah.
What happened?
I don't know. Except that the pilot was killed in cold blood. How the others, Hamilton was, the ball turret gunner was killed, I don't know. I don't know about the others. Except that I got picked up right away, and they paraded me in front of the co-pilot, and he denied knowing any of us. Of course, he was under orders. And so then they picked me up and took me out to a cemetery, and they brought there 3 other guys from another crew, and they told us to dig your grave.
Who has you in custody at this point?
The Germans.
Is it the Army or the police? Or the
I think it
civilians?
was, I was picked up by a civilian.
Do you have a gun?
No, he had a pitchfork. But these other guys, they pulled me out, they took me out to the cemetery and gave us some shovels, and we started digging. And sure enough, as soon as we got that grave dug, they brought up another truck, and there was 4 bodies in it, and I recognized the radio man's by his dog tags. He'd been beaten to death.
Oh, wow.
How Adelson died, I don't know.
Were they all 4 from your plane?
Yeah, and no, just him. The others were from another crew, and they took me. We covered the bodies up. They took me back. They put me on a train, I believe. It took me down to Dulac Luft, which was the interrogation center.
Where was that located?
That is Frankfurt. And they rode the train for a while with a couple of guards, and then they put me on a truck.
Were the other 3 Americans still with you?
No, I was by myself. Then I got down to the interrogation center, and they took me into some place, and an Englishman was there. And he said, "I say there, mate, you had a bit of a go of it." And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "You play bridge?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Sit down." So I sat down and played bridge with him. He was the most mild-mannered, red-haired Englishman you ever met in all your life. He was on his 6th tour of duty.
Gosh.
He'd been flying since 1939. Then they pulled me out, and they interrogate me.
Tell us about that.
Well, first thing out of the box was that the guy said to me, he said, "You are nothing but a sergeant. You don't know nothing." I said, "Why in the world talk to me then?" So then they took me into another room. I sat down there, and another guy came in. I'd fallen asleep, and he woke me up, and he said, "You are tired." I said, "Yeah, I haven't been in bed in 48 hours. And he said, "Well, I don't know how the interview went. But anyway, but the gist of it was, he said to me, he says, "Mr. Heekin," he says, he said, "Your cruise is here with the 8th Air Force, 47th Long Group." And he said, "Your pilot's name is Wilson, and the crew members were named him off." And he said, "Wilson, that's English." He says, "Trout, that's German." He says, "Shankin, that's German." He says, "Vasilopoulos, that's Greek." You could see in his eyes he's a Greek. And he says, he comes down to the name of Heekin, he can't figure that one out. And so I told him, he said, "Well, it's not English, it's not German." So I figured I wasn't telling any military secrets. I said, "No, I'm Irish." He says, "Oh, well, Mr. Heekin, no wonder you don't tell me nothing. The Irish, they got a head of their own." Take you out in the wood. And then he turned me over to some sergeant, great big fellow too. And he turned me over to this sergeant, and he said to me, he says, the sergeant said to me, so you want to talk to a colonel of the German Air Force, take you out in the woods and have you shot this afternoon. And I get, a little while later, they put me on in a cattle car of some variety. There was about 40, 50 people in the car.
All of them prisoners.
All of them prisoners. And it took us up to Slotlock Luft number 4, which was 90 miles north of Berlin. And the prison camp was Luft 4, and it's about 90 miles north of Berlin and 2 miles from Großischau, which is present-day Poland. And that's where we were until February the 6th. This is June. We get there, and I got there about July the 1st, I guess.
Tell us what the place looked like.
Huh?
What did the place look like?
Well, it was, there was 10, there was 10 buildings, and they all looked alike, had a window, And they had 10 rooms in each building. And I was in Barracks 4, and I found that out later. And then I was put into a room alongside the washroom, and there was about, I guess, 12 people in the room. And they all seemed to have the name G, H, or F in there. And it later filled up, and they triple-decked the bunks, and we wound up with about 24 people.
All Americans?
All Americans.
How big was this room?
Not very big. We did have a table and bunks. 4 people slept on the floor. And we had a bowl. And they brought the food out and from the in a bucket and we just ladled it out, and we'd get a bucket, and it was always potatoes, sometimes some kind of a oatmeal dish, and sometimes they put a little spam in with potatoes or bully beef. The cheese we got, and the chocolate bar we got, and there was 5 packs of cigarettes in the parcel. We were supposed to get a parcel a week, but it didn't work out that way.
Was the food served regularly? Or?
Well, we got a 1/7 of a loaf of bread in the morning, and that was breakfast with their, we called it brew. It was kind of ersatz coffee made out of burnt acorns. It was foul-tasting stuff. And then lunch they brought out some potatoes or another dish, and dinner they brought out, and roll call was always at 4 o'clock. And we'd have to, my barracks was about 2 feet off the ground. And so there wasn't any tunnels. And if there was a escape committee, it was new to me. There wasn't anything, there wasn't a whole lot of organization among the prisoners. And I spent most of my time walking the compound, and then we'd have dinner, and the Red Cross came through about September and brought some playing cards in and some other stuff. And so either I'd be playing bridge or I'd be reading.
That's the way you spent your days?
Yeah, that's how we spent our days. And then we had a little pot-bellied stove they brought in about September or October. And we got a bucket of coal a week. So all we had to do was, we lit a fire to take the chill off, that's all.
Did they have sufficient clothing for you?
Yeah, we had, I had a raft overcoat and had GI shoes. They brought those out in September. And otherwise I was in flying boots. And then we had one fellow, he was a cowboy, and then guess we were there until September, or till February the 6th. And we left on the march. And we left, and we went down to an island in the Baltic Sea, or in the, where Werner von Braun was perfecting the rockets. We walked through there, and it was dead of winter, below zero. And they put us out in the field, and they said, here's where you're going to sleep. No fires.
Oh, boy.
So I was with a guy by the name of George Robinson and another fellow by the name of Dizzy Jazowski from Cicero in Chicago. And the thing about George Robinson was he could outcuss General Patton any day of the week. and I was raised just the opposite. And so anyway, he and I became good friends. And we were in the same room together. Then we went, when we were out in the field, while we sleep 4 blankets below us and 4 blankets on top of us. We call that sleeping Indian style. And there's 3 or 4 of us, and we just yelled shift when we turned over.
How long were you out in that field?
Well, we were on the infield one day, and then the rest of the time we would walk in the daytime and sleep at night. We'd always be in a barn. Of course, there wasn't any fire in the barns either.
Yeah. How large a group are you at this point?
Oh, there was a couple hundred at a time. There was 10,000 people in the camp. About 6,500 of us made the march. And we slept, I guess we were in bands of 1,000, say. Because we were counted as we left. That's all I know.
Were you all airmen?
Huh? Yeah, we were all airmen. We were all staff sergeants.
How have you done?
And we slept in barns all the way across Germany. Then they had a wagon that would bring up the rear with the injured, and that was pulled by cattle. And George and I rode the wagon once because we were getting well, I always describe it as trying to walk from here to Kansas City on 3 boiled potatoes a day.
Oh, boy.
So we only weighed about 100 pounds. And George and I were getting kind of weak. And he got sick. He came down with pneumonia. And there was a doctor with us, Dr. Kaplan. And he was from South Africa. But he was with the English Army, but he served with us in LaFour. And he was in a different logger from me, so I didn't know him until I got to the Long March. And then George got sick, and I went up to visit him. And I came back out of there one time. I came down with the biggest case of dysentery you ever saw in all your life. Ooh, it was just brutal. And I just cleaned up what I could, cut my clothes back on.
Yeah.
Left the next day. Then George and I rode the wagon once, it got too cold, so we'd start out at the head of the line in the morning and be tailing Shirley at the end.
Oh, boy.
At the end of the day. And then, along about April the 1st, it got a little warmer, so it wasn't so bad.
You've been marching for 2 months now?
Yeah,
Amazing.
yeah. And how we lived, I don't know.
Were the guards,
But there were guards,
were they civil toward you?
a little bit. In the camp itself, there was one guy called the Green Hornet. We called him the Green Hornet because he had a green uniform on. And then the other guy, another guy was called Big Stoop because he was about 6'5". And he was a sadist. He had like to box your ears, cuff you around. I didn't get cuffed, but a couple of people did.
Just for any reason at all, or did they break a rule?
Just breaking rules. Anything, and they'd come through the barracks every once in a while and tear things up, just for meanness.
Mm-hmm.
And I was alongside the latrine area was outside, and it was about, one barracks away. And during the winter, we built a sliding track between the barracks. That was a lot of fun. So we'd run, slide down there, length of barracks. So whatever we did, break our backs. But then we kind of amused ourselves that way.
Sure.
And then we had to put the big boards up on the windows every night before he went to bed, or before the lights out. And of course, it got dark early up there.
Yeah.
And so it was around 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So we put the blankets out, and then we go in, and I was alongside the washroom, and so that was convenient for us to get to the bathroom at night. There was just a bucket there. And then also, I was the greatest grounder of water the human race will ever know. I'd take a sponge bath about 3 days a week. There wasn't any showers.
Oh, no showers.
No shower.
Wow. Could you shave?
Huh?
Did you have a shave?
We shaved about, I shaved about every other day or something like that. And then we left on the march. We didn't bother to shave. We didn't bother to take a shower or anything.
For 2 months.
For 2 months.
Oh.
And we got to this barn, and it was getting warmer, and George Robinson said, "Let's get out of this joint. They ain't feed us." And I said, "How in the world are we going to do it?" And I said, "Beats the world out of me, we'll make it somehow." So I recruited 2 other guys, because George was a nervous wreck, and I knew it. And so we snuck out of the barn about, at night, dark. It was, say midnight. And we went out to the area, which is the latrine area, and we take the guard, give him a cigarette, walk him the other way. And one of us would leave. We did that 3 times. We met in a creek bed, I'd say half a mile away. And we met there, and then we had to walk through a forest We walked through this forest and we had to tie a string between us to make sure we were tied together. And then we got into some open area and we ran across 5 little wild pigs. And we caught them. And one guy had a little penknife. And we were in an area where the trees were kind of big and the smoke would dissipate by the time it got to the top of the trees. So we built a fire and ate these hogs.
Oh boy.
These little wild pigs tasted like fried chicken. And you skinned them and they peel off like a banana. The skin would peel off like a banana.
How you doing? That was ingenious.
Yeah. And we stayed there for a couple of days. Then we moved on. We'd walk in the daytime, walk in the night, sleep in the daytime.
Which direction are you heading?
Yeah.
Which direction are you headed at this point?
We were heading west. And one guy could read by the stars. So he was pretty good at it. And that's why I recruited him. And then we got to an area and a German patrol came through. And I was out gathering fir branches. We were going to sleep in a depression in the ground. And these guys were off somewhere. And they were in the depression. And I was out gathering fir branches and a patrol came through. German patrol came through. And they took one look at me. And they came after me. Then they changed their mind and went the other way. Because I was just too sorry looking. Hadn't shaved, still had that raft overcoat on, and I was a real mess, only weighed 100 pounds. And he went on their way, and then we slept that day, got up, slept that night, or we got up and I said, hey, the main road can't be very far away because I heard artillery fire. Which side is which? And so I went down to the road. It was a mile or so. And it was a dirt road, I think. I don't know if it was blacktop or not. And a motorcycle came by. And he was going too fast for me, so I waited till a Jeep came by with an Englishman. An English, it was an American Jeep with an Englishman in it. And he said, another guy, another laid-back Englishman. I said, there, Mike, you had a bit of a go of it.
Oh boy.
I told him I was an escaped American prisoner of war. I got 3 buddies back in the woods. And he said, well, we could take you up to the division line. So they took me up to the division line, and another big major interrogated me again. And he said, do you think you could find your mics? And I said, yeah, and he gave me a half-track and a Jeep, a couple of men. And we went back, and I said, it's right through these woods here. And we drove back there, and sure enough, old Johnny Quinn was out there waving his pants. And George had disappeared. And we waited for a while, and he didn't come back. So we went down to the road again, And George was off his head. He came up the road with a Frenchman. They were just shouting at each other. I just told him to shut up, and I pulled him in the truck and gave him a cigarette. And he was sick. He was real bad. And the other guy was sick too. So they wound up in a hospital, and then I was taken to another place, and another Englishman, he said, "No dakes coming in."
No what?
Dakes.
What are those?
That's a Dakota. That's a C-47. And I said, "No." And they put me up the head of the line every day for chow. Boy, they'd take good care of me. And then I got a plane, and they took me into Oxford. And I was in a hospital for about a week. And they put me on a malnutrition diet. I had enough sense to pay attention to it. And they took my clothes off of me, gave me a shower, and burnt the clothes. They gave me some, I think I had GI pants and an English jacket of some variety. Looked like the Eisenhower jacket. And then I got a weekend pass and went back to the base. And nobody knew me. And they said, "Get out of here." And I recognized something across the field. And I went over there, and the first sergeant knew me. And then I went down to London, and I stayed in a Red Cross hospital I was there for a week or so. And I had a ball. I had a ball. I teamed up with a couple of Australians. And they didn't care whether school kept it or not. They were just actually giving up as two. The English were just wonderful to me. And my dad asked me, he said, "How the English treat you?" "Fine, Dad. They're very hospitable." That broke his heart. He was very Irish.
Well, how much time elapsed from the last day you were a prisoner on the road until you met up with the English and got some help for yourself?
About 19 days.
In those 19 days, did you only eat those pigs, or did you have something else to eat too?
We dug up a few potatoes, a few other things, and there was a wagon train came through, and there was an abandoned wagon during this one place, so we got some flour out of there, and we built a fire, and we had hot dogs, or hot flatbacks and molasses.
Oh my God. Did anyone help you at all along the way, or did you didn't see anybody?
No.
Go back to when you ran into that patrol of Germans. What were they doing? Were they on foot, or were they in vehicles?
No, they were on foot.
How far apart were you when they spotted you?
I wasn't more than 30 feet away from them. Why they didn't? I guess I was too sorry looking. I couldn't hurt anybody.
How many of them were there?
There's just two or three.
I'll be darned. That was darn lucky.
Yeah. That was luck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, so you're back, you're hanging out with the Australians and having a good time in London. What date is this approximately?
I was in This was after the war was over.
The war was over.
Yeah. Well, I was in the hospital.
Okay.
The war was over. And so I was down in London after that, and I was just having a big old time for myself. Open up a pub every morning.
Whatever made you go back to the U.S.?
Well, I wrote home, and well, then I got back on. I got on a boat, and I came into New York Harbor, saw the Statue of Liberty, went down to Fort Dix, and I called my mother, and she answered the phone, and she said, "We've been waiting to hear from you."
Wow.
And then when I got home, my first thing out of my mother's mouth was, "I told you so."
Oh.
She, "No, Mother, that's what I wanted to do. I knew what the consequences were." She was tough.
Apparently so.
Well, with 10 boys in the family, you gotta be tough.
Did you hear whatever became of the rest of that marching group of prisoners?
Well, they all of a sudden, they were in a barn, and the war was over. And they came out through Lucky Strike.
I don't know what that is. Maybe you can-
Well, that was a base at the end of France and Belgium.
I see.
Yeah.
So the rest of your crew that survived the initial
Yeah, they came back through Lucky Strike. I didn't. It was.
Now, you mentioned before we started the interview that you've been back to the camp that you were settled in.
Yeah. There's a fellow by the name of Leonard Rose, lives in Indianapolis, formed the kind of Little 4, Little 6 association. And I sent him $5 a year. And so he got in touch with a tour guide in Chicago. And they said, "What about a trip back to Little 4? And I heard about it. And I said to the wife, I said, "Let's go." And she was game. And we flew out of New York to Berlin, then got on a bus, and they took us up to Little 4. And the only thing it's a forest now. And there was a busload, say 45, 48 people. And we had a little monument up there. It might be in the scrapbook, I don't know. But we had a little ceremony, and the Polish were in charge then, and they were very hospitable. I like the Polish. But that was quite an experience. I admit I cried.
I imagine so. Yeah. Well, do you maintain any friendships with the guys that you served with?
Yes, I'm in touch with Joe Shankin and the pilot's sister.
Uh-huh.
Pilot's sister lives out in Oklahoma, and we went out to a crew reunion a couple of years ago. And Joe came, he lives in Detroit, and my wife was from Detroit. And another fellow on the crew was from Detroit. And that was the radio man. And so I called his sister and told him that they had a bad experience in that the government said he was missing in action, then he was killed in action, and then they reversed it again and said he was missing in action. And so they said, "Are you sure he's dead?" And I said, "Yeah, I buried him."
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that went over like a lead balloon in a swimming pool.
No doubt.
And but I'm in touch with Joe Shankin.
That's great.
Yeah. And Vasilopoulos is, I got a Christmas card from him for years. Then all of a sudden it ceased. It seems that his wife died, and she did all the writing.
Yeah.
And now I understand, I always sent him a Christmas card, and it never came back until this year, last year. Address on them.
Well,
And Joe Shankin and Vasilopoulos were in the same, were in a different logger than I was.
I see.
They kept Joe a little longer because he could speak German. He was fluent in German, because his parents were from Germany.
Maybe that helped him survive.
I don't know.
Was there anything else about your experience that you and I haven't talked about that you'd like to share for the camera?
I think I told everything.
It's a delicate story. Well, I appreciate that. Thank you so much for conducting the interview and for your service to the country.
Okay.